let's get through this quick. You've done this before, but what we're doing is done throughout the whole book. You're going to have to use this in every chapter quite often throughout all the way to the end of the year. So you're going to want to learn this right away. And again, you did this a little bit last year, and in 8th grade too. Yep. So on a coordinate system, remember this is the x-axis, this is the y. So if you plot a point like, yeah, oh, if you plot a point,
Mason, close your armpits.
2 over 3 up would be right there. And say -3 and 2 up would be there. Left 3 up 2. Remember the first number side to side, the second one's up and down. X, Y.
You went 3 up.
Oh, it's supposed to be 3 up, sorry. Okay, so on those 2 points, this is an easy one. If they asked you what's the distance from point A to point B, how far is that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay? If we had a point 5 over 1 up and 5 over 4 down, what's the distance between C and D? 5, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But if it's, let's see, I'll just put a point here and a point there. If you had to find the distance from X to Y, you can't count. Hey, shh. So anyone remember how you can find the distance between a line that's not horizontal or vertical? You kind of got the right idea. That's the slope, rise over run. But the distance from X to Y.
You can still find it, can no? I have no idea.
I see it. You just
There's 2 ways to do it.
Oh,
The algebra way, we did a ton of it last year.
Oh, is it?
The geometry way, it's basically the same thing, and you learned it last year too.
Y equals mx plus b.
If I go like this, what does that form?
A triangle.
What kind of
Oh,
triangle?
A right triangle.
So, what is it, Mason?
Hot news.
That is the hypotenuse.
You didn't answer the question.
And you remember how you can find the length of the hypotenuse then?
You take the 2. It's a Pythagorean theorem. It's
Hey, Pythagorean theorem.
What's the
We can
what's
count
the
here. Okay, shh, quiet. This distance is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Hell yeah.
And this distance is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Hell yeah.
So the Pythagorean theorem, remember, is a squared plus b squared equals c squared. So it would be 5 squared plus 6 squared equals c squared, the hypotenuse.
Yeah.
So then remember what you're going to end up doing to get rid of this squared to figure out what c is. You got to square root it. So it is 7.8. On these, when you're going to get decimals, just round to the nearest 10th. In geometry, most of the time, we always just round to the nearest 10th. Sometimes they say 100th, but mostly the 10th. Okay? Now, you don't always want to have to draw a right triangle in order to figure it out. Because say it was from here to there. You don't want to have to draw it out and make a right triangle every single time, right? You guys put your iPads upside down, otherwise they'll just lock you in. Just put it upside down. Okay? So, what you do is you figure out the coordinates. Most of the time they're given to you, but if not, find out what they are. This is left 7, so it's -7 and down 3. And this one is
No, she's good.
10 over 3 up. So, if you just have the points, you can use the distance formula. Okay? And again, this is used throughout the whole book. So the quicker you learn this, the easier it'll be for you. The distance formula, when you take your MCA test, is given to you next year when you take it. If you take an ACT test, you know, you get a formula sheet. This formula is given to you on that also. Distance is x minus x squared plus y minus y squared square rooted. Now the actual formula that is in the book and that you would see, they put a little 2 and a 1 there. All that means is they say take the second x minus the first x and the second y minus the first y. Remember, this is xy, xy. But it really doesn't matter which one you subtract. Okay? It doesn't matter which way you do it.
Why did you put it in the book like that then?
The only reason they put this is because, I don't know who would, but if they just put x minus x, someone might take 10 minus 10 because that's an x.
Oh, yeah.
So they're just saying subtract the two different x's is basically what that says. So, the x minus the x, I'll go 10 take away negative 7 squared plus the y minus y. This one I'll just switch and do it that way. Negative 3 take away 3 squared.
Wait, you can do that?
And you square it. Yep. This, it doesn't matter on the distance formula
That's
which
a
way
good
you subtract.
question.
On slope, you got to do them the same way. When we get to slope.
But you can switch around the.
Distance, it doesn't matter which way you subtract. And I'll show you why in a second. So this turns out to be 17. Because remember, you subtract. This turns out to be negative 9. Square rooted. Now, this is where the calculator could mess you up. Because calculators don't always do this the same way. The little calculators and the big calculators do them opposite. If you just punch in the square root of 17 squared plus negative 9 squared, you're going to get it wrong. The reason why is,
The square root and the.
what is this?
Oh, it's a number.
Okay, can you guys be quiet, please? A negative squared is going to be what? Positive. Now the big calculators are going to make it a negative. Okay, so that's why, and all calculators do it differently. I don't know why they didn't make them all the same, but they didn't. So you just, when you're doing this, just remember, when you subtract these, if it turns out to be a negative,
Make it
just
positive.
disregard it. Don't even put the negative in your calculator, because it's going to turn out to be positive anyway. That's why it doesn't matter which way you subtract. If I switch these two and went negative 7, take away 10, I'd get negative 17, which, when you square it, is going to turn positive anyway. If I were to switch these two around and went 3, take away negative 3, I would have got, I got a wrong number here, don't I? It's 6, it's not 9. It would be 6 instead of negative 6. Okay?
Yeah.
So that's why it doesn't matter which way you subtract on this. So, 17 squared plus 6 squared, square rooted is 18.02, so you would just round it to 18. Okay? Now, what this is, this distance formula, it's actually just the Pythagorean theorem. It gives you the Pythagorean theorem without, if I had this right triangle, where this is 1 over 0 up, and this is 1, 2, 3, 4 over 2 up, if you use the Pythagorean theorem, this is 1, 2, 3, and this is up 2, right?
Yeah.
So it's 3 squared plus 2 squared, square rooted. Now the distance formula is x take away x, 4 take away 1 is 3 squared, so that's there, plus y take away y, 2 take away 0 is 2 squared, and then you square root it. So you see they end up being the same thing, okay? So we're just gonna do a few of these problems. I think it's something like 6 or 8 today.